All right, everybody. Welcome back to Apostate Weekly. I'm your host, James.
And I'm Ryan.
I am Martin.
And let's roll that intro. All right, everybody. As you see, we have a special guest with us, Martin. And if you've been keeping up with our shows over the last couple of weeks, we actually talked about his story a little bit last
Yeah.
week because it's been all over the news in Pennsylvania and the papers and on TV. And there was a couple part video series as well that's been going around. So, how about you introduce yourself to everybody, Martin, and kind of let them know what's going on with this, if you don't mind?
Sure. My name is Martin Hawk. I was a fifth generation Jehovah's Witness. I pioneered for about 6 years. I was a ministerial servant for 12, elder for 5. My wife and I have been out, and my kids for about 7 years. So I've been an advocate for bringing the truth upon the truth. My sister, my sister, excuse me, my daughter was a victim of CSA back in 2005. My mother was also abused as a child as a Jehovah's Witness back in the 60s. So this problem has been in my family for 6 decades, and so I'm using all the skills, all the talent, all the training that Watchtower gave me to expose the problem they have.
And if I remember one of your tweets the other day, when you mentioned that about your mother, she still was covering up and
Mhm.
protecting the witness
Yeah,
reputation, even though these things happened to her and she knows firsthand how they dealt with it.
yeah. My mom was her biological father died in the 60s. He was an alcoholic, and my grandmother married a JW, and in the 60s, and then immediately started to abuse my mom, her stepdad. Um, she went to the coordinator, congregation servant. Excuse me. There was no elders back in the 60s, and I didn't know that. She didn't tell me about that. So my parents were both poor. They both worked menial jobs. We both had to either stay at the farm with my other grandparents in Pennsylvania or go to Ohio to stay with my JW grandparents. So in '88, I was 11, and we were there for the whole summer. And my brother and I saw my step grandfather molest our cousin, who was
Ooh,
also Jehovah's Witness. So we went to the
gee.
elders, and that's when I learned that my mom was abused 20 years earlier, because the elder told me the statute of limitations had expired in her case, and I'm like, what the hell, statute of limitations, mom? And then she told me what happened. But she was so brainwashed that she was dropping her daughter, her sons off at the same man who had molested her 20 years earlier.
Wow.
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 That's deep, right?
Yeah, very.
That just shows you how deep that goes. Probably taking responsibility for something that's not her fault, you know? Because that's kind of how
And
they make it work.
I'm a big man. I can accept all the criticism about what I did with our daughter. I know I should have went to the police back in 2005, but I was institutionalized because in '88 we didn't call the police. We went to the elders. That's what you did. That's, as a kid, you go to the
Mhm.
elders no matter what. So that's what I did, and it doesn't make up the excuse that I should have stopped it from happening. It doesn't excuse me that that man who molested my daughter also moved to Delaware and molested another girl in 2012. I could have stopped that from happening. So that's on me too, but I was brainwashed at the time.
And see, that's not something I would throw on you either, because, like you
Yeah,
said, you were brainwashed.
yeah,
You were taught that's the way you deal with it. This is the right way to do
exactly.
things. You know,
You were doing as what you thought the right thing to do. And ultimately, that's what the governing body tells you trickled down to the
Yeah.
elders. But that's straight from God. Like that's from the word, like straight from his lips. So we don't question, even though it might even go against our natural instincts to protect our children, we shove that down because we're Jehovah's Witnesses first. And honestly, that is something that most people who leave the witnesses say, is that they put being a Jehovah's Witness above being a parent. And it's
Yeah.
just how it
Yeah.
is.
mhm, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, even children who are still in and their parents have left, like in my case for a short while, put the religion above the parent, you know? So it's a two-way street when you're indoctrinated and
Yeah.
brainwashed to think that way. You think you're doing the right thing because, oh, I have this higher moral standard from God that I must do these things. And this is what I must do because this is God's one and true only organization. This is what we do. And so I know a lot of people have guilt for following the rules while they were in, but at the same time, you know, I know it's easier said than done, but you can't hold that guilt in and blame yourself for it because you were part of it. You were a victim of that indoctrination.
I also
Yeah.
have this is like morning therapy here. Just briefly, I was on 6 judicial committees. I just fellowshipped 2 people, but sadly I reinstated like 4, which is maybe even worse. I don't know. And one of my biggest regrets as a Jehovah's Witness is killing somebody because I was visiting like an 85-year-old man at the hospital and he was not lucid. His wife was there and they were typing him from blood. And I said, "Hey, do you know what they're doing to you?" And he's like, "No." I'm like, I was an elder. I wasn't on the hospital liaison committee or visitation committee. I was just an elder visiting a sick person in the hospital. I said, "Do you know what they're doing?" He's like, "No." I said, "They're typing you for blood. Do you want a blood transfusion?" And he freaked out. His wife freaked out, and they stopped it from happening. And then he died. So did I kill that person by saying that? Should I just kept my mouth shut? So we all have baggages, but again, that's what you're supposed to do as a Jehovah's Witness. So
But
Yeah.
see, that responsibility should never have been
yeah,
placed on you. It's
Mm-mm.
it's not your business, some guy who is not educated to do this type of work, but yet it is so heavily, and you think you're doing the right, like you think you're saving somebody's
yeah,
life. So yes, you're going to do that, even though it sounds a bit ridiculous that you got to die here and now to save somebody's life. But to us, it makes complete. I mean, I almost watched my grandfather die. I mean, it's
Yeah.
happened to a lot of us where and I was just willing to let it go, just hoping he wouldn't die. He was losing so much blood, and somehow he survived. But and then we were like, oh, see, that's God.
yeah.
That's Jehovah working
A-
right there.
And I know I'm beating a dead horse on this channel by saying this probably for what I think the third week in a row now. I almost died because my parents refused a blood transfusion when I was born.
Dude,
So
it's
I I got lucky I lived, but you know, it's just these
you could
stories
have
of
went
the
wrong.
indoctrination. This was before the HLC, before the AIDS virus was known to the public, because this was back in 82. So, you know, all of us have 3 of us. I didn't realize you had that too, but we all 3 of us here have in some way been touched by the blood transfusion issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that
Is it?
guy, it still bothers me. I don't know why that bothers me more than other stuff that I did because I did things
Yeah.
as an elder that I'm not happy about. Let's put it that way.
Well, it's hard to
Yeah.
make recompense with somebody who's passed away
Yeah,
too. And I think that's probably what it is because you can't go and apologize to them later for it because
Right.
it's too late.
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, but it's again, it's those circumstances where we really shouldn't have had to been in a position to even speak on, but when it comes to what you think is everlasting life, you're willing to go that extra mile. So I hope that you're have talked to somebody about that because that is a
yeah,
heavy. I couldn't imagine. I mean, I have my own burdens that I'm carrying, like when it comes to my kids and things. I really wish I would have done better had I realized the indoctrination that was going on. There's just
yeah,
so many things, and I have to say, like, just having the communication with everybody in the audience and hear things of this nature with the community is very helpful too. But therapy, who recommend 10 out of 10.
Yes, absolutely. So, anyways, can we go into um let's bring up to modern day because like I mentioned at the outset, you've been on the news.
hmm
And so can we talk a little bit about that and what's going on with that?
yeah. So, I was one of those weird JWs that loved service. I love talking about Jehovah and the kingdom and paradise. I loved it. I love getting territories done, getting streets worked. I was a checklister, and so I woke up in 2016 My wife and I we were in the parking lot. Remember this? And I said, "Let's go get this guy. Let's go call the police and let's do this." So this was like almost 11 years after it happened. So 2016, we contacted York County Sheriff's Office, Northern Regional Police, got the investigation going. Problem with the whole situation, I don't want to be too negative, is the uh, the DA, Assistant District Attorney for York County, was not a nice person, and they kept saying, "Oh, you're only doing this because you hate the religion, not because you want justice for your daughter." And that's why they dropped the charges, I think, eventually.
Whoa,
He
that is
was a
What?
terrible.
Yeah, he was arrested.
Whoa.
So so in my case, and I'll get to the whole news thing in a second. So in my case, I was not an elder when it was my cousin who molested my daughter, and he was in the neighboring congregation. My uncle was an elder. He was removed as an elder. I was a servant. I didn't know why he was removed, and they moved to Red Line, neighboring congregation, only about 5 minutes away from Yorkana. And everybody knows the elders get the letters of introduction, so you know this person's qualified to serve as a pioneer, a ministerial servant, or elder. But the rest of the congregation doesn't get that. So my cousin had molested a little girl in Yorkana, which we didn't know at the time. And then so the elders knew that he was an abuser. So then he molested my daughter. And then my uncle was never to be reappointed an elder after that happened, So he was so mad. So when I became an elder, like 6 years later, my uncle and my aunt and my cousin moved to Delaware immediately. They did not want to be in that house. Okay. So I was an elder, and we got an emergency elders meeting. He did it again. He molested a girl. Martin, you can't be on the case, but we have to conference the elders in Dagwood, Delaware. And then the Watchtower wanted all the documents we had of him down there. They didn't want it to have in multiple congregations. So when I go to the district attorney, I said, "Hey, my daughter's not the only case. There's this person. I know 2 others." And they were like, "Well, they haven't come forward because they were indoctrinated. They were Jehovah's Witnesses." I found out who the person in Yorkana was. She hasn't pressed charges, but I have no idea who the girl in Delaware is. So I was pretty upset with York County District Attorney's Office. So I said, "You know what? I'm going to let my voice be heard. I'm going to go to media." Well, in 2016, 2017, nobody wanted to cover this stuff. They didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. I contacted so many newspaper articles, local channels. But then when 2018 hit, we had the Me Too movement. All of a sudden, I was getting media requests and this and that. And so I was doing all the interviews I could, all the newspaper articles I could. I wanted to get the information out as much as I could. And I was able to publicize what they were doing better, but it wasn't until the PA grand jury investigation started that now news media is more interested in it again because now it's become more relevant.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that it's finally is relevant. It's a
Yeah.
shame that it's taken till now, but it seems like there's finally a push where people are willing to talk about some of these really hard topics. Like it's time that we're willing to discuss them.
Now, I have a question. Is there a statute of limitations still in effect in Pennsylvania?
Yes. So, oh my God, I'm really good with numbers.
I hate
So
it.
in PA, I was being sarcastic. Sorry. So in PA, oh my God. Up until the 90s and 80s is only 2 years. So if you were abused at 12, you had to 14 to sue. Then they changed it. I think it's 30. So you're 30 years old for criminal charges and you're 50 for civil charges. But they want to change it even more. They want to open that a 2-year window up to anybody can sue. So my daughter's case was relevant for because she was like 14 when we went to the police. Yeah, she was 14 when we went to the police. So her case was open for civil and criminal charges. My daughter didn't want to sue. She didn't want to sue Watchtower. She just done with them. We have a case. I talked to a lawyer. He told me I have a case. My daughter didn't want to push it, so I can't force it. I'm not going to sue Watchtower if she doesn't want to do it. I'm not the victim. She is. So we've never put civil charges against Watchtower. But I told my daughter that she still has the opportunity to sue anytime she wants to. But now people who were abused in Pennsylvania in the 70s and 80s and 60s, currently they cannot sue civil or criminal charges because they passed 30 and 50. and I'm pretty sure those are the numbers. I learned these numbers 5 years ago, but I don't remember. Don't quote me on that. So if you were abused in the 90s and or 2000s, yes, you can still get justice criminally and civilly, but not people decades ago. That's why Mark Rossi, the state representative from Reading, wants to open that 2-year window up, and the Republicans in the Senate, Pennsylvania State House, keep pushing that bill down because they say it'll bankrupt the Catholic Church, it'll bankrupt Jehovah's Witnesses. So that's why they care more about business than they care about actually protecting children.
Wow. So with that, now I know this we're talking about just Pennsylvania state
Yeah.
right now, but a couple years ago, there was the law that was opened up in New York that removed that statute of limitations for that year. Did you get in on that at all?
No, because again, my daughter didn't want to sue. So what people took advantage of that law was, I do know this story. So because Pennsylvania has a New York-based company, people from Alabama or from Hawaii got to sue Watchtower in New York State, and it was successful. Watchtower settled cases. Again, I could still file a lawsuit tomorrow if my daughter wants to.
Right.
But some people did take advantage of it, but other people maybe didn't know about it or weren't aware of it. And again, Pennsylvania is still a legal corporation. Excuse me, I talk too fast. Watchtower is still a legal corporation of Pennsylvania also. We have Watchtower Bible Tract Society of Pennsylvania and of New York. They have at least 2 different legal corporations. So people could, let's say this, if Pennsylvania opens it up, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer expert, but say they do pass this law. They open up a 2-year window in Pennsylvania. By that logic, people, again, in Oklahoma or New Mexico probably could sue Watchtower.
Hang on. Let me pull you back there. Past what law? I'm not aware of what you're talking about.
Right now in the Pennsylvania State House, they're going to open up a 2-year window to anybody can sue civilly. If you're past 50, if you're past whatever, they want to open that statute of limitations up in Pennsylvania for 2 years. Mark Rossi has introduced this bill like every year for the past 8 or 9 years, and it keeps getting struck down in the Pennsylvania State Senate.
Isn't that because I was just actually talking to somebody about a law that's supposed to be passed. I wasn't quite sure what it was. Is that going to be considered in June?
I think so. Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
Okay. Because I have a friend I was just talking to the other day about this. She's actually traveling to Pennsylvania to be there and help picket for it or whatever next month for that law to pass.
Yeah, I think it's up again. But Mark Rossi, I've been to his office a couple times in Harrisburg, and every year, because he was abused by a Catholic priest as a young boy, so ever since he's been in the his Pennsylvania State House as a congressperson, state representative, he keeps introducing this bill. It keeps passing the House, but it keeps failing in the Senate. Our governor, Mark Shapiro, will sign that law as soon as the Senate passes it. But the Republicans in the state keep putting riders on. Like they're amending it and putting weird things. I don't know exactly what the details are, but that's what's going on right now. But again, so like if you're in Pennsylvania and if you were abused by Watchtower or any other religious organizations in the 80s, you have no recompense right now unless that bill gets passed.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
I think they updated it in like 94, 95, somewhere in the 90s where it is now. It hasn't been updated in 30 years though. But before sorry.
No, go ahead. Finish.
Before like 94, 95, again, you had 2 years. That's it. 2 years to bring civil or criminal charges. But again, if you're a little kid, if you're 10 or 5, and plus if your parents are the one doing abuse, how are you going to,
you don't even necessarily have the where you're not in the position of, number one, having the wherewithal of really what happened to you, right? And then second of all, you're not necessarily in control of your life to make that decision because your parents ultimately have that. So you might need till you're 18 or till you're 20 to realize like, oh no, wait, hey, I actually do want to do something about this. And just so everybody's aware, we have talked about this before on the show. You can go to rain.com, RAINN.com, and you can select your state, and you can select a couple, like up to 3 states, and then you can compare the different laws, like the clergy penitence law. You can find out what the statutes of limitations are. And I use that quite often when I'm like trying to report on different states and what they have going on, because here in Pennsylvania we still have that clergy penitent privilege, which I would love to get that removed. There's so much that we need to work on here, but thank you. Yeah, so please check that out, find out what your statute of limitations are, and we need to start letting our representatives know
Yes.
that this is something that we want. We want the ability for people to have more time so they can get in an age where now they can make a decision for themselves if they want to hold somebody accountable who harmed them. So.
And that's one of those laws I think is absolutely ridiculous, to have a statute of limitations at all on something like that. Because like you said, people could be with their families, have it happen to them from their family members when they're young. They grow older, then they finally can get some therapy and process it and be like, oh man, I need to really do something about this. Oh crap, it's too late. You know, there should never be a statute of limitations on something like that.
You might be 30 years old, you know, waking up out of a cult and realize, oh, I don't have to be okay with that. I didn't have to forgive that person. Like I'm actually not okay with what that person did. And that's your decision to make. And I don't think the law should be able to hold you back on that, holding somebody accountable who did something atrocious.
No, not at all. It's just another way that I think religions lobby for these kinds of laws to happen. So that way they hope the timer runs out so they never have to be held liable for their actions.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever watch that movie Spotlight about the Catholic diocese in Boston? I think I forget who was in it. It was a really good movie, and how one of the lawyers who was representing the victims was in cahoots with the Catholic Church, and they were settling payments like thousands of dollars, and the Catholic Church was just writing it off as a business expense. And my wife and I watched that years ago, and it was such a good movie. It showed it went back so many decades. It's not a new problem.
Wow.
Just people didn't talk about this. That's why. One more thing about Mark Rossi. He told me that his priest was sent to New Mexico for a child abuse facility that the priest get rehabilitated in New Mexico, and they have a facility, a retreat in the desert, and they built that in 1947. So that's what he told me. So the Catholic Church, that was 80 years ago almost, 75 years ago. They built this retreat to rehab Catholic priests.
They knew it was a problem.
Yeah, they knew. Yeah.
And I imagine how long had it been a problem that it took them that long to have it built in 1947? Because, it probably moved a lot slower back then than it does now. So.
And again, I don't want to make fun of the Catholics. I don't hate any one religion. They all have their own problem.
Just kidding.
No. But I'm saying at least the Catholic Church admitted it, did kind of apologize a little bit.
Right. I do have to say I am appreciative that the Catholic Church is at least addressing it. Are they doing things the right way? No, I think they're still being little babies about stuff.
Yeah.
But at least they're not like denying it. And that's something that I think that the Jehovah's Witness organization and other religions need to start to acknowledge. Like Mormons, like they need to start acknowledging, okay, there is a deeper issue here, but we care about you enough that we want to fix it. We want to build the trust back. And that to me is the problem. There is no trust anymore with these religious organizations. And I feel like that is why religion is starting to die off, because there's no trust there anymore. This is the place where you're supposed to be safe, and it is not a safe space. It's safe for, creating the bad behaviors, right? That's where it fosters all these really bad ideologies. But as far as fixing it and keeping other people safe, and children especially, no. Worst place for your kid.
So, like, not to be weird or anything, but like growing up, you heard best religion ever, best organization, most perfect organization run by imperfect people. You kept hearing this over and over. The gold standard, going
Yes.
back to blood care, the gold standard of care, no blood. So my problem with JW apologists about child abuse, they will just say it happens everywhere. It happens everywhere. That's fine. If it happens everywhere, then you should have the best practices. You should have the best standards. I thought you're better than the Catholics. I thought you're better than the Mormons or Scientology. So your actions, your conduct, your procedures should be better, higher if you truly are God's people.
Yep. I actually asked
Right.
that question to a friend of mine who he's currently just fellowshipped witness who doesn't go to meetings, but he still believes it.
Yeah.
I asked him that very question. I'm like, shouldn't they be setting the example, leading the way on how to handle it rather than being just the same as the rest of them? And he agreed with me on that. He's like, yeah, they should be. And the fact that they're not
Mhm.
really says a lot about who they really are.
You know what it says? It says they're self-righteous.
Yeah.
That's what it says. It says that we're good how we are. This is acceptable how we are. I've seen businesses handle sexual harassment allegations and things of that nature better. And ultimately, the organizations, these religions, these big religions, are businesses, and they need to be ran as such.
Yeah.
I mean, truly,
And
when
text.
you're
And
at that
text.
side, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, that's a whole nother topic, but I believe the churches should be taxed. I've done some research on it, and I think that the pros far outweigh the cons. And I understand everybody's fear of the cons. I get it. I do get it, but I don't think we're going to know until we try.
So not to hijack your, but I have a question for you two. Do you remember we went from the contribution to the donation? Do you guys?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
used to ask for money at the
I
door.
remember.
Like
Yeah,
that's
I
my
remember.
generation. We used to ask for money, and then we had to stop asking. We had to ask for like donation.
I know I'm the youngest one in this group, and I remember that. So.
Okay. Well, some people forgot, but because it was all about taxes, because Watchtower knew that they were going to have to pay taxes on every magazine
Yeah.
placed, every book, every Bible. It was nothing to do about Armageddon's coming. We got to speed up the work. We got to make it. This is life-saving work. No, it was all about the money back then, 30 plus years ago.
Well, see, I didn't know that part of it back then, but
Right.
I remember it switching. They always told you, well,
I'm trying to remember what they
you
told us.
receive
What was
free, you
their?
give free.
Yeah.
So we're gonna, basically give it away for free because people shouldn't have to pay for it, but yet we're gonna ask for voluntary donations, and that's where the loophole was in those voluntary donations, so they weren't taxed.
Yeah. And then I remember they would brag, like sometimes when you just ask for a donation, you even get people would just hand you a 20. They'll just hand you a tenner. Like I remember people saying like, oh, I've never gotten this much money. And they didn't even want a magazine, but they gave me like this $5 bill. Like I just remember people like, see, it is better. See, it's working better.
So
like, damn.
I have another little story about that. Again, I hate to take over so I have so many stories. So November 2007, our Kingdom Hall Quick Build burned to the ground. It was bad wiring. It happened Sunday morning before Kingdom Hall. I was a ministerial servant back in 2007. So the Quick Build came, we demolished it, and there was a Quick Build coming up or a remodel, and they gave it to us. So it was like November 2007 and March 2008, our hall was rebuilt. Okay. So we're doing a rebuild, and like so many JWs from Virginia, from Delaware, Maryland, all over came to help because they heard about this hall being burned down. And so I was doing security, and this church van rolls up, and they're like, hey, we saw in the paper your hall burned down, your church burned down. We really feel bad. They gave us an envelope of like $500 cash donation to another church. Would we do that?
Wow.
I gave it to the accountant, the RBC accountant there.
Wow.
I didn't take it. But would Jehovah's Witnesses, if a neighboring church was a hate crime or burned down, would they give a penny or draw? And that wasn't the only one. Somebody else got a donation from a local church too to build that hall and rebuild.
Well, let me go along with that thought right there, because the Jehovah's Witnesses wouldn't even participate in other religious funerals in Germany for their victims when the other churches were showing more love to the victims than the witnesses were to the community.
Yeah.
So
and they refused. So I think that just goes to show you, like that of all, when the Jehovah's Witnesses say that, like, oh, people who are disfellowshipped obviously already have outside friends. y'all, we are so insular. We won't even let people pray for us.
Yeah.
Like, please, please. That is just how enclosed this group is. So I don't want to hear it.
I had a really scary time in 2010. I was a servant, and my wife's worldly grandfather passed away, and the burial was going to be at the grave site, but his service was going to be at the church, and I knew I couldn't go. And I kept telling my wife, I can't go to this. I can't. I'm going to get in trouble. She's like, shut up. Just don't tell anybody. Shut up. I'm going to go. She was a pioneer, but she wanted to go. Well, luckily, because all her aunts and uncles and cousins weren't Jehovah's Witnesses, just her parents, her dad and mom, brother. Luckily, I got really sick, so I had an out. So nobody was mad at me because I got a cold. But like, did I make it up? Was it like psychosomatic? Did I get sick on purpose so I didn't have to go? I was scared to go to a church. I was in London at 18, and we were at Westminster Abbey. And I could not go into it because I was scared to go in. Like there's a wall there, like so much fear.
Yeah, my dad used to get afraid there were family weddings and things of that nature that we didn't attend because they were inside of a church. We would go to the reception. And I do remember one time we went to a church for a family wedding, and my dad was just red in the face. Like, he was so uncomfortable. And I remember it was my first time in a church, and I was like maybe 13, 14, I don't know, something like that. And I was just in the church going, like the first time I'd really seen it, like, dang, like, why is this so pretty? They have windows. Why do we go to church in a box? Like, this is so weird. Like, this is so pretty. I could sit here and stare like all day just and that's probably why they don't want to take it, the eye off the person on stage who's boring you into
No, you got to keep your eyes on the prize.
Oh my God.
Yeah, keep your eyes on the prize. But yeah, I remember that feeling of like, oh my God, I'm in a church. There's probably demons in here. Like, oh my God, what's going to follow me home?
The 45-minute public talk Sunday morning when you're a kid before they reduced them to half an hour. Oh, and they were boring most of the time. Or you'd have the brothers who would read like 50 scriptures in 45 minutes, and it's
yes. Oh man. Or the ones who would go over, like, who just didn't care, who like didn't really care that people were just dying in their seats, or they'd say like the 5-minute prayer at the end. Like, we always had that guy who he could tell the audience was just exacerbated, and yet he wanted to pray about, I don't know. Who knows?
Every part. He'd rehash every single part and thank Jehovah thank you for the Bible reading where we learned that Uzzah was struck dead by you. Thank you so much for for showing that nobody should touch the ark. And thank you for this part. And sister so-and-so did such a great job in this part.
Oh yes. And we want to remember all those who couldn't make it to the meeting today, and just keep Satan away and just protect those people, because we know they must be going through so much that they couldn't be in these seats. And help me. Anyway, sorry, y'all.
So anyways, let me rein it back in here.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay.
This has been fun. It's
been good. I mean, we haven't really I've never actually talked to you before today. So, this is really getting to know you. So, but when it comes to your case again, we're going to go back to that, because that's what the whole topic was about today. So where are you at with it now? What's your current status with it going forward from here?
So do you mean the PA investigation?
The case?
Or my daughter's case?
Your daughter's case specifically, and does it relate to the other PA cases as well?
So, dumb joke. Some scientists think we're living in a simulation. This is all fake, and I kind of think that sometimes, because think about it. I'm a son of a child abuse victim. My cousin was abused. My daughter was abused. Then I became an elder, and I learned of 4 other child abuse cases in my congregation. I don't know if anybody how the elder body arrangement works, where, the first quarterly elders meeting, when you get appointed, they go through everybody in the congregation on restrictions, reproof, qualifications for servants. So you learn, even if the abuse happened 15 years ago, well, this brother can never be appointed ministerial servant. He can never pioneer. In 2006, even though this was 2011 when I got appointed, he did this at a daycare with worldly people. So he's been labeled a predator. This person has been labeled a predator by Watchtower. He can't go out in service by himself without an elder being there. He raped his younger sister. I'm not lying. That actually, my first elders meeting, we went through all those people.
My dad was an elder, so I've heard all this stuff.
This lady, she can't pioneer. She had a 2-year relationship with a 14-year-old boy, and she was 25, and she slept with a 14-year-old boy for 2 years. She's been labeled a predator by Watchtower. She can't pioneer or join the school. Uh, this couple, they raped a 14-year-old girl together, the husband and wife. So he can't serve. So that was the first elders meeting, 2011. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yes. This is not for you to, I feel
So
horrible for you because that is a horrible burden for the everyday average person
yeah,
to have to freaking bear with zero pay. And you're taking this home, you're wearing this home, and you're not
and
prepared.
you have to smile, and you can't treat them any differently. Now you know what you did to your
Right.
sister, and I don't want to say names. I don't want to slander anybody, but this is what
No,
happened.
right. I get it.
So you have to, this one, the 2 predators, if the elders weren't out in service, they couldn't go out in service. They were not allowed to work with children out in service that weren't their own. That was the labels with Watchtower. Okay, so I wake up in 2016. I go to the police. He gets arrested. He spends like a week in jail. He gets bailed out by my uncle. The charges get dropped. There's no other things I can do with my case, my daughter's case. But then working with Mark Rossi, I got attention to the PA Attorney General's office, and they approached me 4 years ago, and they said, "Can you help us?" And I said, "I would love to. I would love to help you." So the summer of 2019, I had a bunch of lawyers at my house with notepads, and I was like giving like a class, and they were asking me questions, and I made a flow chart how the governing body, the branch works, the elders work. And they kept asking about the clergy penitent privilege. And here's the problem with Watchtower. Watchtower is on the hook because when an elder in Pennsylvania, clergy do not have to report child abuse when they learn it during a confession. Problem is, most times they learn about child abuse is not during a confession. It's when somebody else comes forward with, "Hey, this person," that's not a confession. They have to report that by law. And I didn't know that until 2019 and didn't really understand the law until, because we were, as elders, we were mandated to go to schooling every like 1 or 2 years to understand the child abuse laws. Watchtower never did that. They're culpable for that. So not only was I became an elder and learned of other child abuse, I could help the grand jury in the investigation in many ways possible. So I got them literature. I talked about theocratic warfare or spiritual warfare, how they're allowed to lie to law enforcement. So then I came to their office a few times. They asked me questions, and excuse me. So like a Catholic priest, I don't want to. Let's do a Baptist pastor for a second. A Baptist pastor, somebody comes forward with child abuse, and in confession, and I abused my daughter hypothetically. The Baptist pastor doesn't go to the local retreat and talk to the other Baptist pastors about it. He can't. He broke penitent privileges by talking to it. But Watchtower wants to play it both ways. One elder is the clergy, all the elders are the clergy. By the whole body discussing child abuse cases that happened decades or 10 years ago, they broke clergy penitent privilege because and other congregations will talk about it. They call headquarters in Patterson. They're talking to a paralegal there. So I thought we don't believe in a Trinity. So all elders are 1 and 3 at the same time. It doesn't make any sense. So the last 4 years, my daughter's case is dead. But I can, maybe that guy, he's in his 30s now, will be arrested for the other people he molested. Maybe not. I don't know. But again, I don't want to minimize what happened to my daughter. It happened at a Kingdom Hall, but it could have been worse. And so many women and men have gone through worse situations than my daughter did. She's better mentally, I think, than I am in some days, because she was only 14 when we left. I was 38. And so I can use my voice to help other kids so they won't be molested. I don't know if elders are going to be arrested in Pennsylvania, but they did tell me that I basically have immunity, which means maybe they will. I don't know.
Well, that was
That's your question. I'm sorry. That was,
no, because I was actually going to ask you while you were an elder, because my mom asked my dad this question after they left. Did you ever sit on any committees involving CSA?
No.
Because that's a good thing.
The 4 cases that happened before I was appointed an elder, but they were ongoing. You know what I mean? My daughter's case happened before I was an elder. The only problem that I did is the one case she was raped as a teenager, married a worldly person, and her husband said, "Go to the police." This is in 2012, and the elder said, "Don't go to the police." She went to the police. Police got warrants for our records in our Kingdom Hall. Watchtower's freaking out. We bought a shredder. I bought the shredder. They shredded all the personal notes of her case. All the elders did.
Jeez.
So am I legally on the hook for that, for destroying documents? Even though I didn't do it, I went to Office Max in York and bought the shredder, gave it to the coordinator. He shredded all the notes that they had taken during her case. So when the police came, the only thing they gave her was like her publisher card, her letter of introduction, some other stuff. But all the notes, all the records they had about the investigation were gone.
Wow.
So again, if they want to put a misdemeanor on, but I admitted that, so another thing I did wrong too, I didn't even think about it. One of my childhood friends growing up, he was like 21 or 20, and he had a relationship with a 16-year-old. But, so I knew that happened, and they're still Jehovah's Witnesses. So back in March or February of this year, the chief investigator for PA called me up and he goes, "Hey, what do you know about this person?" And I'm like, "Oh man." I said, "Why? What do you need?" I have it. And I told the story. He goes, "Why didn't you tell me that before?" And I said to him, they said, "That's what I have." And I'm like, "Well, I didn't think that child abuse." Like in my twisted head, that is child abuse, right? And I'm like, I am so sorry. I did know about this. Never even. So how many cases do Watchtower elders know about? You have a 16-year-old, a 19-year-old, a 16-year-old, and a 20-year-old.
Yeah.
So are they going to go after that person? I don't know. They're still Jehovah's Witnesses, so I don't know. I don't care. But like I apologize to him. I should have told you about that case before. Now I was an elder. I was 20 at the time too. You know what I mean? Or he was older than me. I might have been 19 when that happened. He was older than me when this happened.
I think in those instances though, where the ages are relatively close, but one is still underage and one is of age, I don't know. I know the laws vary from state to state,
Yeah.
but I have heard of some states have what's called the Romeo and Juliet laws.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of a gray area because, kids those ages, they can do stuff and it's not necessarily abuse on the person who is of age at that point. Now, where that line is drawn, I have no clue on that. But if it's within a few years, I think it's falls under something like that.
I guess it depends on the state.
Depending on the laws, depending on the state.
Yeah, it's always going to depend on the state too. Yep.
So that's probably why you didn't think of it in that respect either, because it wasn't like a huge age gap. It wasn't like a 16-year-old and a 40-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's just a tough position to be put in, to have to, again, to make decisions that you're not educated about, that people go to school for years and years and years, and they probably still even need help because it's really difficult things to digest, just as a human being, right?
Yeah.
Even getting paid to do these things are very difficult. And just to have the everyday layperson who has the Bible as their instruction book, please. The Bible that says genocide is okay. Come on. Like what do we expect here when the Bible says it's okay to go into the next town over and murk everybody and make sure we save the young girls? Like, I'm just saying, if that's our morals, well, yeah. That's our moral basis here.
Add to the fact that the witnesses have the 2-witness rule as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many times do you know of that an abuser is going to go abuse somebody and he's going to say, "Hey, you come over here. You need to witness this. I need 2 witnesses."
It doesn't work like that, right?
Now, I know they're
never going to work like that.
A pool of other victims, that he's struck with before, but that still doesn't make it right. They still need to get his ass to the police station and prosecute him, and not, go their backroom route with their kangaroo courts.
Yeah, that's the problem, is that they have their own court system. There is a distrust in the law, and trust me, I get it. Seeing some of these lawmakers, like, thank goodness there is guys like Mark Rossi who want to protect children, right? Like, thank goodness there are some really good people in the system doing the good work and fighting the good fight, but there's just as many, if not more, who don't care and want to protect their religion. They're more worried about keeping confessional private than they are about, children being protected. And that just says so much to me where people's real heart is at. So,
So
Yeah, so with the future of the PA investigation, they won't tell me when it's going to wrap up. All I do know that if COVID didn't happen, it would have been done by now. COVID really, because
okay.
the grand jury ran out, they can't keep it in panel forever. And then in 2021, they had to re-impanel a new grand jury. So basically, a lot of us witnesses had to go retestify again for the new grand jury because,
Oh,
yeah, so that delayed it along, again, I can't go into details like that, but so the question is like, you probably heard there's rumors that every county in Pennsylvania is under subpoena for their documents. That
yes.
Watchtower hired the same law firm that represented the Catholic Church. That
Yeah.
it's a mandated meeting that every elder by county has to meet with those lawyers so they don't mess up anymore. Have they destroyed the documents and made them all digitized? I don't know. Maybe they don't have local documents anymore. But I know my Red Line and my Prospect. I was an elder in two different congregations, Red Line, Pennsylvania, and Prospect. And both those congregations in the disfellowshipping judicial cabinet, they had records going back to the 1950s. That's how long,
Wow.
Wow.
because you're never allowed to destroy those records, because what if they come reinstated? They want to be reinstated, so the elders are dead or moved on.
Yeah.
So a new elder body is appointed, not excuse me, a new committee is appointed. Then you're supposed to open those records up and see what happened or the notes. So they have, yeah. Does it apply to former elders too? I think so. Yeah, I think. Sorry, I saw the question. I think, again, I don't want to speak for them. I don't want to get in trouble. But I do think that if they broke state laws, they could it be just a misdemeanor? I don't know. Could it be a felony? I don't know. But we know in Delaware that two elders were charged by the state back in 2019 for failing to report child abuse, and they had to pay that. In that state, it was a misdemeanor, so it was a $30,000 fine they had to pay. Watchtower paid that fine. In Illinois, two old elders were arrested. They were charged. So there is precedence. It has happened, but this is the first statewide investigation in Pennsylvania. So if I was an elder, I'd be scared. I would call the Attorney General's office, get a lawyer right now.
Yeah.
And because I was told by them that the ones that help don't have to be worried about anything. That's all I can say.
And I wouldn't dare call Philip Brumley to be my lawyer.
That was actually part of my news. My news for today was what was happening with Philip Brumley. But I think
he's a lying sack of shit.
Do you remember?
Right, but that goes to show you what they are capable of.
Do you remember that
people?
JW broadcast pluff piece they did about him like 9 years ago, how he was one of when JW broadcasting, my wife
maybe, I don't know,
was waking up and she hated it from the get-go. I didn't like it either. I was not brainwashed. All these people were out and said, "Oh my God, it's so great. It's so great." But one of the first pieces, like 2014, 2015, it was Brumley's story about how in 1980 they needed lawyers. So they asked a bunch of new boys if they wanted to go to school. And he was Watchtower paid him to go to school, be a lawyer. Yeah. And then he said, "I almost fell out of the truth because I was in law school," because you're around normal people.
Right. And then they were going on to say, like, that's what, this is one of the reasons that we don't recommend people going to school, because, and Tony was rambling on a few times about how, like, you got to be careful what happens to you in school. You can be deterred. And oh my goodness. So yeah, you get educated right out of high control religion.
Here's what I hated. I hated this so much. Like, I was the good guy. I did everything perfect. I never went to college, never got in trouble. Pioneered at 18, ministerial servant at like 19 or 20. Just did everything. I would have been appointed an elder sooner, but I called the branch when my daughter was molested as a servant, so that I got punished by that. I wasn't appointed an elder until I was 34. And the elders did tell me if I wouldn't have called the branch, I would have been appointed earlier. So whatever. But one of the every circuit had those circuit overseer loved elders, like the elite elders that were just like worshipped, you know what I mean? Gave all the speaking parts at the assemblies. And I know I was never a great speaker. And this one kid I grew up with, um, his parents weren't really strong in the religion. He went to college, he got a CPA, he got his master's, and then like in his late 20s, he got baptized. Then he became a servant and elder, and he's making like six figures working for a top accountant for this law firm. And he had every part, and because the circuit officers loved him because he would give green handshakes and buy stuff for them, and it was like, wait a second, why are you rewarding this guy? This guy went to college, and now and it's not just him. It happened hundreds of other times where witnesses who did take advantage of higher education, then Watchtower would take advantage of them and use them and promote them. And I'm like, what about me or all these other elders who did everything right? And now you're not going to. Again, it was just a favoritism game, and it was all politics.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
it kind of reminds me of like what's happening with Serena Williams. I wonder if there will be some form of, you know, different treatment because they are in the eye of the public. And I've seen people posting like her at, I think she was at the Met Gala just recently, and all the different things that could be considered that are like demonic there. The association is just would be absolutely deplorable. So I mean, we could just go on and on about why that would not be normal for everyday Jehovah's Witnesses, but it's acceptable for her to do that. And look, I'm not hating on her. I think she's like I wish I had like just that much percentage of her talent, quite frankly. But what I'm saying is like, but truthfully though, that it's not fair, it's not cool, because other people might see this and think like, oh, see, yeah, Jehovah's Witnesses are cool. Look, this guy's a lawyer. This person was a famous tennis player. Psh, they're harmless. When
So
reality, we know the truth.
my father-in-law is an elder, and I was out at his house in '99, and he gets off the phone with another elder, and I was a ministerial servant then, I wasn't elder, and he gets off the phone, I remember this, and he goes, all right, we got a case. All right. I'm like, what happened? What happened?
Juicy.
Brad, I'm like, oh, this pioneer went to Woodstock. I'm like, oh, okay, we're gonna remove her. Like, okay, why? Well, there was rape there. She was there. I'm like, so you hadn't met with her. You just got another elder called you, told you that she was there. You automatically in your mind, because some elders love that power, love that control. And I'm like, well, I thought you were supposed to go to a case. Was she raped? Did she rape somebody? Did she take drugs? Just because she was there at Woodstock, you're going to remove her as a pioneer. And that's the kind of some elders that my father-in-law was and other elders were.
Right. But it's that preferential treatment. Some people get it and some don't. But when we do see the preferential treatment, that's when people go, see, they're normal.
Yeah.
We treat people the same.
Michael Jackson, Prince.
Yep.
You know,
all
yeah, right. And there's other like famous JWs that I can't think of them now, but I didn't even know. And I'm just thinking in my head, like all the times that just personally I wanted to play sports or do other activities, like social activities, and I couldn't because you can't be trusted. Like that's really the end of the day, the message is you can't be trusted. Doesn't matter how well you do at school. Doesn't matter if you answer every freaking question at the Kingdom Hall. Doesn't matter if you pioneer. Like nothing matters. You are not trustworthy, and that's just something that doesn't go away. That rings true, like through your head, through everything. Just you doubt yourself. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, this has been a great conversation. Yeah. I know it's gone off the rails a little bit, but that's okay.
Sorry.
No,
that's
fine.
not you. This has been a great conversation.
I love these kinds of conversations. So don't apologize. Don't feel bad. This is great. But we got to really wrap things up here. So is there any final words you'd like to say before we jump off of here, Martin?
Yeah. So again, if you're in another state and you want to help out, contact local media. If you have a story to tell your story. It took me 2 years to get anywhere with local media or national media. Talk to your attorney general's office, call them up and say, hey, call your local district attorney's office and said, I think there's a problem here. Can you investigate that? And if you have evidence, you don't need all the evidence. You just need a couple of rumors or accusations and let the experts investigate. So what happened with Pennsylvania, they won't tell me what congregation it was, but some district attorney in some part of Pennsylvania realized this was not just a local problem. This was a statewide problem. So they approached the Attorney General's office and said, we need help. We want this investigated. So that's what it started. Local law enforcement went to the local district attorney, and I will not be told. I don't know if it was Erie, Pittsburgh, Philly, Harrisburg, York, Reading, Lancaster. I don't know. It doesn't matter. That's how it started on a local level. So can every state have their level of investigation? Sure. Just talk to your media. Media can be great. It can put pressure on law enforcement.
Mhm.
And also law enforcement can be useful in a lot of instances. So talk to your local police captain or chief or anybody you know, or even your local congressperson. Let talk to them. My goal is every state does an investigation, and eventually the FBI takes over and does a national-wide investigation. And again, my final words I could say is I don't hate any Jehovah's Witness. I don't hate any individuals. I don't want anybody to stop them from worshiping Jehovah or the governing body, however they want to. The First Amendment gives us the right to freedom of religion. You can worship any God in any way you want to, or not worship any God in any way you want to. But the First Amendment does not give anyone license to break the law, to hurt kids, or to push their beliefs and systems on other people. So you can still worship your God. You can still be a Jehovah's Witness. And this investigation still can go on and arrest the people breaking the laws. Jehovah's Witnesses claim that God's laws are higher than men. So if that's true, let men arrest people who are breaking the law and get the rod out, get the worldly people, the wicked people out of the congregation, and then your congregation will be clean before God.
Absolutely.
Well
It's
said. Well
it's pretty
said.
much that easy, right? Just need to
Yeah.
change their policies, get it all written down what will work for in the best interest of the children. And
And
it's
that's really what we're all advocating for here. That's why we do this
yeah,
show. That's why we try to get the awareness out. We want to help affect the change in these laws to help the children out and help the people inside. We don't care if they want to, like you said, we don't care if you want to continue to be a witness, do your thing. We respect that, but we want to have better protection for those inside. So, with all
yes.
that being said, Martin, thank you so much for joining us this
You're
morning.
welcome.
It's
I had a
it's been
great
an
time.
absolute
Yeah.
pleasure.
It
Really,
was
it
nice to
has.
meet both of you in person
Yeah,
for the first time.
absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was a great surprise. I'm glad I got to speak to you, and I'm thankful that you were able to share your message with us and your story. And we appreciate you just being so open and honest and raw. I understand it must have been very difficult, and still you're dealing with difficult things.
Oh yeah.
But
Yeah.
the more we speak out, the more we band together and we share information, the more we really can start to hold this organization account. I do believe it's possible, but we have to just stop talking about it. But we got to do more of the education and the backside stuff with the law. As much as we don't like getting our hands dirty, we kind of got to start getting our hands dirty involved in the
And
law. So
and one final thing I want to say, thank you for all the work that you've been doing
Oh
behind the
yeah.
yes,
scenes
yes,
with the
thank you.
lawyers and getting the awareness out and all this. Thank you for all your hard work and
Yeah.
efforts going into this as well.
Yeah.
It's
I
very
don't want
much
any
appreciated.
I don't want any other father or mother to go through what we had to go through. If I can stop just one kid from being abused, my work
Right.
is good. The joke was all we need
Yep.
to do is save one person, and our witnessing was worth it. So my viewpoint's the same. If I
Yep.
can just save one person have a lifelong life of harm and trauma, then all the work I did is, think about it. We don't have Tuesday night meetings or Thursday night meetings or Saturday service or
Yep.
family worship. I have plenty of time to do this stuff.
That's right.
Yeah.
So
Oh, Martin, where can people contact you if they'd like to do that?
Yeah. I'm ex elder on Reddit, ex elder hawk on Reddit. Spell out with it like a bird. Send me a private message. You can follow me on Twitter at Martin Hawk. On Twitter, it's HAUGH, not spelled like the bird. I have a YouTube channel. I only post seldom. I should post more often. I'm John Martin. I started my YouTube channel. I really didn't want to use, so my middle name is John, so I just switched to I'm John Martin on YouTube. I have a couple of videos about my story and that. Again, the one more call out, the PA General's office. If anybody has any stories of child abuse, doesn't have to be in Pennsylvania. The PA have the power to go investigate other states, and then they're referring to local law enforcement. So if you want to contact,
I didn't realize that.
yeah, so they've been all over the country. They've been to California. They have been to Idaho. They've been to New York. So they want as many cases as possible. So they're referring it to local law enforcement. So if you want to talk to a nice guy, his name is Jimmy. I've been working with him for 4 years. Contact me. If you know of a case that somebody was abused and you want some help, he'll handle it. And he doesn't have the power to arrest somebody in Nevada, but he can contact local law enforcement and get it going. So I've helped a lot of people in the past few years maybe get some justice. So they can reach out to me on Twitter or Reddit or
I
YouTube.
didn't realize that other people from different states, like if you have something about the J-Dubs, you can actually call the PA attorney's office
Yep.
about the. I did not realize, because I've talked about this, but I'm going to talk about that again. That is good to know.
So in 2020 or no, 2022, 2021, an elder just woke up in Missouri who was actually handling a CSA case. They flew him in. He was still an elder. They flew him in to testify after I did, because I was an elder years ago. The policy hadn't changed. So they actually flew out to Missouri and worked with local law enforcement on that case too.
Wow. That's awesome.
They were also in Puerto Rico too. So the I don't want to say the other person's name or whatever out them, but they actually flew to Puerto Rico because they learned of child abuse there. So the Attorney General's office has given them basically, I think, an unlimited budget to go anywhere they want to. They've been to Georgia. I know that too. So yeah.
I'm sorry, this just got delicious. Okay, this is
that
good
is,
to know.
That is some fantastic information right there.
It really is. I wish I would have said that on my first video. I just said it was like PA, because I called myself and told my own story. But like,
the only problem is two people reached out to me on Reddit who were out of the country, and I can't help them. They can't help anybody out of the country.
Okay, right, that makes sense.
It has to be in the United States. I'm sorry about that. I can't go out of the country.
You said United States, but does that also include the territories of the United States?
Yeah, they were in Puerto Rico. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So I just want to make sure that was clear for our viewers that, the territories and the United States.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Okay. Well, with all that being said, thank you everybody for joining us for this special edition of Apostate Weekly with Martin. Martin, thank you again for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
We will see you all again next week.
Have a great day.
Apostate your way.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.